like it here. Let's ride down, and baby, let your mind roll on.
Let's go to her critique of Jean-Paul Sartre in her book, and I'm going to go through it chapter by chapter and talk about what she says about him. In the first chapter, The Discovery of Things, she says Jean-Paul Sartre, Marx's analytical tools and desire for action, Kierkegaard's lonely, anguished individual, and Husserl's method and terminology of phenomenology. And she says in his descriptions, there's Jean-Paul Sartre's descriptions. And remember, she's just talking about Jean-Paul Sartre up until 1953 when she's writing this book. So this is very much a book that's locked into that time period, and the other things that happened to Sartre after 1953 aren't really taken into account, of course, in this book. Anyway, she says that Sartre combines Husserlian and Hegelian vocabulary with Freud's psychological insights. She also says that as a novelist, he doesn't really act like a phenomenologist in his natural medium. However, he is a sincere propagandist, using a powerful weapon when he writes his novels. So she's going to start by talking about his novels first, and then get into his philosophy. The first couple of chapters of her book really discusses Jean-Paul Sartre's novels, La Nausée and The Labyrinth of Freedom. La Nausée, she says that he combines Kafka's transparent hero in an absurd world with Wolf, Proust, and James, who tend to, James Joyce, I guess, actually, who senselessly fragment the world. But he also does it, what makes him more interesting than perhaps those writers, besides his use of their technique of fragmentating the world, is that he uses philosophical analysis in his books. Roquentin, the hero of La Nausée, lives without human relationships. He finds the contingent overabundance of the world nauseating, and the world for him is a gooey, vicious, viscous mess. So it's kind of creamy, melting the world for him. He places a rational intelligence, his own rational intelligence really, which is concrete and is good, against a sickening, evil world. And that's her description of La Nausée. In The Labyrinth of Freedom, or Paths of Freedom, his next book, she says that it's about people who assert or deny their freedom. Matou is an ineffective intellectual, Danielle is a pervert, and Brunner is a communist. Each character chooses their mode of life, and each is really an individual with a solipsistic center, she writes. Says all of them have a horror of the flesh, its inertness, its flabbiness, its stickiness, its heaviness. So basically they're all kind of sides of Jean-Paul Sartre. That's the way that she sees it. And in her third chapter, The Sickness of Language, she writes that this age is the end of essentialist thinking. She says Rimbaud overloaded meanings into his poetry, and he was followed in doing this, the overload of meaning, by the surrealists. On the other hand, Mallarmé wanted language pure and non-referential, so instead of having too many meanings, he had perhaps too few, or no meaning except itself. And he was followed in this by the linguistic philosophers, who wanted the facts of science to be all that there is in the world. Again, this is Murdoch's opinion. And she says that Sartre actually goes against the linguistic philosopher. He sides with the surrealists. I think that's interesting. She also talks more about novels in general. She said that Zola says the novelist must kill the hero to show ordinary lives. that Zola doesn't want heroes in his novels, and that Sartre is following Zola in this. He does show people as reflective moral agents, that sometimes they're in doubt, sometimes they're insincere, and he uses internal dialogue to do this. And she notes that Georgi Lukács takes this as a symptom of his neglect of complexity, that the characters don't have to really interact with their environment since they're all just doing internal monologues. And instead of shaping their environment and being shaped by it in turn, they never connect with their environment. They're just, everything's internalized for them. And the central theme of Le Chemin de la Liberté is communism, according to Murdoch. She says that Sartre respects communists, but he doesn't respect communist ideas. So, interesting distinction there. And next chapter, The Value and the Desire to be God. She says that Sartre is a traditional Cartesian. The analysis of consciousness is his central point. He's concerned with the phenomenon of awareness, not really with delineating concepts. He actually contrasts the instability of consciousness with perfect stability and completion. So that's kind of an essentialist idea, really, that we can have complete stability and perfect stability and completion. So how do we free ourselves from the unreflective sluggishness that we find ourselves in this world? And she thinks that Sartre aspires through human activities such as writing books and making revolution, that's the way we get out of our ordinary consciousness of just being stuck in the world. But she says that Sartre acknowledges that we'll fail in everything we do, and eventually we'll fall back into the world and into unreflectiveness. So, in a sense, all of our activity is just a vain attempt to be God, to control everything, and to have perfect and complete consciousness. So she asks the question, Murdoch asks the question, can unillusioned consciousness take itself as a value? Is that a value to just get rid of your illusions? In L'être et le néant, she claims that it's more phenomenological. Actually, she says that Sartre claims that it's phenomenological and not metaphysical. I think that she would disagree with that. In What is Literature, the writer then becomes kind of this Kantian, she says, who believes in a kingdom of ends, and a free person chooses freedom for all. And that happens in Being and Nothingness. So of course, he says that also, I believe, there too, that once we choose whatever we choose for everyone.